I'm Josh Barrow, host of Left, Right, and Center, KCRW's weekly forum for civilized debate across the political spectrum. Today's news cycle demands more time for deeper analysis, so Left, Right, and Center is now a full hour every week. Subscribe and listen at kcrw.com/LRC.
Here Be Monsters is a show that invites you to explore fear and the unknown.
I saw her face change. I saw her see where I'd pulled my hair out.
Psychological warfare was always considered kind of an oddity, something done by freaks.
On the count of 3, we're literally going to step out of our body. Step out.
You can find the new season of Here Be Monsters on August 17th at kcrw.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
From KCRW Santa Monica and KCRW.com, it's The Treatment. Welcome to The Treatment. I'm honored to be sitting across from multiple Emmy winner for Breaking Bad, but starring in the terrific new film Equity, Anna Gunn. First of all, thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for doing the show. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Absolutely. I always love talking to you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, first time I met you was, 3 years ago, I guess. There's a live read of Breaking Bad at LACMA.
Right.
And I think I almost blushed when you were standing backstage. Oh, my God. Because I guess we're so used to seeing, so used to seeing you as Skylar. It's like, oh, she can smile.
Yes, that's exactly what everybody says. That, oh, she smiles and she laughs. Yes, I do. Skylar had a pretty tough set of circumstances.
But in Equity, you get to play a character who's kind of an anti-hero. You get to do sort of Walter in this movie, don't you, a little bit?
I do. I mean, I think that, the way I saw her, what I like about the movie is that it feels to me like it's a character study of these 3 very ambitious, very successful women, but also it's got a thriller element to it. You don't quite know. There's a mystery about the characters and gray lines, and you're not sure which choices they're going to make, whether they'll do anything to keep moving ahead, to keep getting those wins. So I found that whole aspect really fascinating as well. And for me, I admired Naomi because of the fact that she says openly, I like money. And it's something that hasn't traditionally been something that women can own and say outright without maybe offending.
Or being judged for it.
Or being judged for it.
In fact, when I met you, we were talking about, at that point, Skylar was being really judged.
Yeah.
Because she didn't want this guy in her life.
Right.
And so that people were taking it out on her rather than taking it out on him.
Yeah.
I remember having a discussion with you. And so the idea of being this character who can claim what she is must have been one of the things that attracted you to the material.
It did, because I don't think we've seen it very much. And I think it's certainly a conversation that we're seeing right now politically. We're seeing it across the board. People are talking about pay equality. And the fact is that women's rights are human rights, and that this is something that we've been taking steps and making strides with, but there's a ways to go. I really liked the fact that this character was unapologetically ambitious and is unapologetically driving forward towards success, towards that golden ring. It does come out of need, and that's what she follows up when she says, I like money. It comes out of a background of scarcity and a need to help her single mother put her 3 brothers through college. And I think that's what takes her into the business. But then I think she finds a passion for putting those deals together and the intricacy of it and understanding the client's psychological and emotional needs and how to play that against the investor's needs. And it's just such an intricate, that's the only word I can think about when I talk about it, because it's something that I really didn't know about before I delved into the research. I thought there certainly was a lot of number crunching, but it's much, much more than that. And I found that fascinating. And I found women who like to play that. It's a game in a way too, and it's about the win, but they have a passion for it. They really do have a passion for taking somebody's business that may have started in their garage with 2 people, and if they believe in the product that they are trying to bring from the private to the public sector, it's incredibly satisfying to them. There's a real pride in that.
We should say the movie's about a crisis point in an investment banking house, and Naomi's just maybe been blamed for kind of a misstep in the house, and she's looking to take on a really big piece of business. And what I find fascinating about it, too, is it's also really in a very subtle way about the way there seems to be room for only one woman in any place.
Right. Yes.
And then the way these women, nobody comes out and really says it in the movie, but she has a vice president who's working with her who also wrote the screenplay.
Yes.
And going up against an old college friend who is now a federal prosecutor
Right.
who contributed to the story of the screenplay.
That's right.
And it's interesting to see this written by women who understand there's a word that Naomi uses that for me is what the movie is really all about, negotiation. And that's opening speech, which, by the way, is a great piece of acting.
Thank you.
Because you can make it really declamatory. It could be one of these things where you're really singing it out. And
Right.
it's almost as if she's sort of surprised she's saying these things out loud as she's saying them.
Yes.
And I just found that really interesting because I'm not seeing you have a whole lot of opportunity to have that big a piece of dialogue, rather a monologue like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it must have been thrilling for you, but also she's kind of letting her guard down, but it's also kind of a performance piece.
Yes.
So there's so much stuff going on in that.
There is. There's so much to that speech. And it was something that I loved about working with Mira Menon, our brilliant director. She's so intuitive. She's so detail-oriented. We worked through the text and through the script beat by beat by beat to make sure we really knew where the story ebbed and flowed, what the arc of Naomi was altogether. And that speech was obviously one of the most important pieces in the film in terms of Naomi's character. We did not want it to be a callback to a Gordon Gekko-ish, cry about greed. And we felt strongly that it was not that, but that it was really more about just the ownership of it, that women don't traditionally get to say that, and why. And it's, again, so much of the film is, I think, shining a light on these things that still the undercurrent of, it makes me think of the moment when Naomi goes in and asks for the promotion that she frankly deserves. She's had a winning streak that's been unbelievable. She's been one of their top producers. She's a known name on Wall Street. She has her one, first public failure, and things start falling out, from underneath her. And when she goes in and asks for that promotion, what she's told is, it's just not your year. The perception is you rub people the wrong way. And that was such a degrading moment. I just remember the feeling that I had when that was said to me. In that moment, it just felt like a punch in the gut. And that, again, was something that Mira and I talked about so much, the metaphor of the boxing, the metaphor of Naomi being such a fighter. She gets knocked down, she gets right back up again. She gets, she's against the ropes, she comes out again, she comes out fighting. But I think she also has to come to terms with some things that she's had to push down and ignore and sacrifice in her life. She's an isolated person. Trust is a big...
But you could actually say about all the women that as compared to the men who are in tribes, the women are all isolated.
Yeah, they are. And it's interesting because when I started researching the project, I talked to Barbara Byrne, who is the vice chairman of investment banking at Barclays, and also one of the investors in the film. So when I first talked to her, she talked about getting into the business in the 80s and dealing with that
really
world.
Misogynist
When it was really
and angry, and basically... women didn't belong. Women were secretaries. They weren't even assistants. They were secretaries.
That's right. And just moving up the ladder and what she had to do, the challenges she faced, the struggles, the victories, and then how she learned along the way to use certain things to her advantage. It's about knowing who you're dealing with and using your psychological and emotional intuition in order to understand what the client needs.
By the way, it's the treatment. The voice you listen to besides mine is Anna Gunn, who's starring in the terrific new film, Equity. But again, for me, that line, that word, negotiation, because she is finally always negotiating.
Yes.
And there are moments in film when, because she struck me, you said boxer, and one of the things that boxers do is they have to be able to read 2 steps ahead.
That's right.
And she struck me as being a character when she can't do that. And there are a couple of moments in the film where she really doesn't know what's going on anymore.
Right.
You can see she's completely lost.
Yes.
And I wonder how much that informs you, that idea, unlike Skylar, somebody who has to be completely aware of what's going on all the time, but also having to try to guess a couple of steps ahead so she can be ready to negotiate when those moments come up. Mm-hmm. How difficult that was to play. Somebody who could never really relax.
Right. I mean, it was absolutely, I remember at the end of those days, that my body would feel like every muscle was tensed up, and I wouldn't even realize it. But there was a sense that she always was ready to make a move, and that she had to be ready to make a move. And that's such a wonderful metaphor that you just used in terms of having to be 2 steps ahead. You have to read your opponent. You have to read where they might be coming at you, and knowing how to block something or how to dodge something, or when it's time for you to come forward. And I do think that she has learned that over the years, the 20 plus years that she's been in this business. And she does almost have eyes in the back of her head. I love that scene when she walks into the office after the news is announced that she's lost that IPO. And there's that sense of being the one woman in the sea of men waiting to get on the elevator, and also the sense of, are they whispering about me? Are they talking about me? Is this going to hurt me? But she has such confidence that she marches into her boss's office anyway and asks for that promotion.
But it's almost banter. It's almost, in a weird way, I shouldn't say a weird way, but it's unfortunate that she's become her job, and that every relationship she has is transactional.
Yeah.
There's a quid pro quo in everything. And
Yes.
even with her boyfriend, she understands that, that she just can't let her guard down enough, because she understands that he is the male version of her, which is to say he has a lot more opportunities, and he doesn't just get one at bat in the way that she does.
That's
So
right.
I wonder if that lent itself to that tension too, that because she can't really, and when she finds this old friend, she almost thinks for a second, well, maybe I can go back to what I was 20 years earlier.
That's right. I think so. And I think that's one of the first times you see her actually relax, is when she's sitting down to have a drink with her old friend. And I think it's such a relief for her. And I think you can tell how much she needs it and how happy she is to have that. And then it turns
the body
on a
language
dime.
changes as soon as one question says, I'm not trying to give the movie away, but
Yeah.
it's not like you say anything. It's just
Yeah,
your body language changes. It's a really physical performance, isn't it?
It is. It is. And again, it was something that Mira and I talked about in terms of the boxing. And I box, I've boxed a lot with my personal trainer.
I can see the way you were throwing a punch, but you weren't just like swinging that back. You were throwing punches. You were planting yourself and twisting the glove as it went in.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I like it. And I think it's, I really do. And as soon as I read it, I thought, oh boy, that's so good. But it's true. I think there's she feels like she's tightly coiled, and she's on, she's on the tips of her toes also. She's ready to move anywhere. It's the same thing with boxing. You got to be ready to move anywhere at any point. And I think that I also had the feeling that she holds her breath a lot, frankly. And that's a hard way to live. It's like living, it's almost, I don't know how her adrenal glands are, but I think they're pretty shot. I think she's been living on the edge of adrenaline for a long time.
Because you said a thriller, and part of the thriller is just sort of wondering how she's going to react when she gets a piece of bad news, because she is so on guard.
Yes.
And again, is that what made you want to do this? Just because it's going to be different from almost anything you've done heretofore, just because it's so much about the way she conducts herself. And I was just thinking about that when she meets her old friend, then the body language changes. And that happens in almost every scene. There's a shift in the way she sort of holds herself.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there are times when she's talking to her client from Cachet, and
Which is the IPO that's about to go very big. And
Right. So she knows how to use her body language too. That was another thing that Barbara said. She actually was in a cameo during one scene where I'm pricing the IPO, and I give him the number that he wants, even though I don't necessarily
believe it.
And I think it's a mistake, but you have to, after the last loss, you want to make sure that you're going to satisfy your client. So she makes that announcement, and Barbara Byrne was at the end of the table. She was the only woman in that boardroom, which was fantastic. And she told me, she came over to talk to me in between a take, and she said, yeah, I only have a couple more hours. I've got to get on a plane and deal with for some reason, when I think of, I always want to say violent takeover, but it's because for some reason I think of that whenever I'm thinking of a hostile takeover. It's a very strange thing. It's occurred to me several times, and so I always want to say violent takeover. That's not it. But what she said about it, and I think maybe the reason that that comes to mind, is that, again, I could see her as the boxer going into the ring. She said, "Ooh, I can't wait." She rubbed her hands together and she said, "It's going to start off really, nice and polite and civil, and it's going to get ugly really fast." And she said, "And I can't wait for it." And I just thought, wow, she just loves getting in there. She said she loves being the one woman in a room full of 30 men because she said when things start to get tense, when people start to get angry, when voices start to raise, she's the woman. She said she gets up and she knows how to use body language. She knows how to use her voice. She knows how to, all those things that you see in Naomi are exactly what she talked to me about. It's a really psychological game. It's very much like being an actor, frankly. I mean, that's my job is to observe human behavior. I watch the way people walk, the way they carry themselves, where their eyes go, what their voice is doing, all of those hints, all of those clues. And that's what she's doing in her job as well. But the fact that she took that there was such excitement, and it was like watching a fighter get ready, get warmed up and get ready to go into that ring. And she loves it.
We're going to take a break. I'm terrified. My guest is Anna Gunn. She's starring in the new film Equity. It's The Treatment. There's more to come. Stay with us.
Long before podcasts, there were radionovelas. Celestial Blood is the first ever to combine the two. One version in English and another one in Spanish. Listen with your grandma, only from KCRW.
Listen to the Rhythm Planet podcast to explore music from all corners of the globe. Brazilian, European, African, and tropical Latin. Rhythm Planet is a state of mind. Listen at kcrw.com/rhythmplanet or on KCRW's app.
Welcome back. It's It's The Treatment. My guest is Anna Gunn. She's starring in the new film Equity. We're talking all this about physicality. One of the things I wonder if this becomes something that you're more aware of, because you're talking about Barbara, and part of being that person, being that woman, is that she's always visible.
Yes.
In a way that men can always sort of blend into the back when they want to,
right.
Or their other sort of go-to is to be aggressive.
Right.
Violent is the word I think somebody used in the first half of the show.
Yeah.
The
violent takeover.
Yes, the violent takeover. Whereas with Barbara, she's always visible. And I wonder if part of this for you comes down to the fact that you're an actress and you're tall. Mm-hmm. So it makes you visible in ways that other women are not.
Yes.
So you are aware in a way that maybe someone who's smaller isn't, and you're sort of aware of the effect you have on people, that becomes part of it too, and that informed this performance in fact.
It did, absolutely. And it was something, again, that Mira and I talked about from the beginning, that she had this idea of Faye Dunaway from Network striding up and down those hallways with such perfect. As soon as she said that, first of all, it's one of my favorite movies, and I've watched it so many times, but as soon as she said that, it dropped into me, and I thought, yes. And when we took that tour of Goldman Sachs before we started filming, I'm tall, I have long legs, and I walk pretty darn fast. And these women walked so fast, I found myself feeling like I almost was scrambling to keep up with them. But I just thought, what a wonderful image of that, as you say, that solitary woman walking through those hallways and the glass offices that are mainly inhabited by men. And she's the sole female, but walking with such confidence, such purpose, head held high. And it is true that, that's something that has informed me as a human being a tall woman. It used to make me nervous when I started out acting. And I remember being told by, actually a man once said to me, "It's going to be tough for you, don't you think, because you're so tall, and maybe you're going to be taller than your male co-stars." And I was so, I guess, brash at that time, and so, had that early 20s confidence. And I just thought, what a ridiculous thing to say. Why should that, why should that inform anything or affect anything? It does, and it did. But interestingly, in my 30s, it stopped being such an issue. I remember hearing the word when I wouldn't get a role that I was too sophisticated. And I always thought, well, sophisticated, is that a bad thing? And what does that really mean? And is that code for something,
I'm sure you figured out pretty fast that it was code for something.
It was code for something. But interestingly, mid-30s, when they used to say, and I am so glad it's not the case anymore, that may be the time when a woman's career starts to take a downturn. For me, that's when my career started to really take off. And it felt like I grew into myself.
Yeah?
Really.
If you're wondering where Anna Gunn is, she's sitting right across from me. It's The Treatment. She's starring in the new film Equity. I guess I wanted to talk to you about you're seeing the script for the first time and then talking about these two women who were they already going to be in the movie when you met with them?
Yes. So it was sent to me and I read it and I just loved it immediately. I responded to the story. I mean, I'm always drawn to good storytelling, be it in theater, film, television. I just want to go where the good storytelling is. And I thought it was tightly written. I thought it was keenly observed. And I also just like the fact that Amy Fox never leaned too heavily on some things that could have been leaned on heavily, that could have really been overly stated or.
Or just stated. In fact, they never are.
That's right. And I think that's the mark to me of a truly good writer who understands that the audience is smart enough to get those little pieces, those little hints of things. You don't have to hit them over the head with it. So I felt like I'd been waiting for a role like this in feature films, honestly, for my whole career. So I just jumped right into it right away. And I also loved the fact that having played a wife a lot and a girlfriend and a mother, and those are all, and those all can mean, certainly in the case of Breaking Bad and Deadwood, those were extremely interesting, rich roles. But they were, in essence, in second position to the male protagonists or the male leads. To have a woman leading the story and driving the story, and also to have the focus be on her work and her career and what she wants in that area, was fascinating to me as well, because it also made me question, so you go after all that, but then what do you give up in your life? And what do you leave behind? And what do you push down? And what do you ignore? And when do the chickens come home to roost? When you come to a crossroads, or when you meet that challenge or that struggle where suddenly you've just been a winner and a winner and a winner and a winner, and all of a sudden it's not so steady anymore. And when you've devoted everything to it, you have to look at it. Unless, if you're going to change, if you're going to move forward, you have to examine it and figure out what you're willing to do, what you want to do. And also, I think the question really is this the thing I want to give the rest of my life to? Or may there be a possibility that I actually turn and go down a different path? Which is a frightening thing for a woman in her 40s who's given her whole life to this. So all those things just drew me in. And then when I started the research process, which is one of my favorite things about being an actor, I was just blown away by these women. Going out to dinner with them after we did the mock IPO at Goldman Sachs that one day, we went out to dinner and just watching them all, just razor sharp wit and such incredible intellect, and it was crackling, the energy.
As you say this, I just wonder if you had that sense of, like Naomi, in some way they seem to be on all the time because they're always so visible. I mean, they can't recede. I mean, because if they do, they'd be judged as being weak.
Right. That's right. And again, that's the whole tightrope walk, is that if you're too tough, you could rub people the wrong way. If you're too soft, you can be pushed aside and not given any credence. What I liked...
Well, like Amy's character.
Yes, that's right. And I think that one of the things that was so extraordinary about the movie was that conceived, created by women, produced by women, female screenwriter, female director, 3 strong female roles. But the cast was very much mixed male and female. And one of the things that I found so moving was that a lot of the men said, look, we were working on a shoestring budget. Nobody was getting rich off this. But they said, I read the story and I believed in the message so much that I wanted to do this because it reminded me of stories of my mother, my sister, my wife, and what I want my daughters to know in terms of what they can be and in terms of what they can move towards in the future. That to me was one of the most incredible things because it was certainly led by women, but it was such a collaborative male-female effort and experience that it was wonderful to see that.
That's really great to hear. And I was bringing up that scene, though, that you reminded me of just because that's almost at one point where the movie takes a breath. I mean, it's outside, actually. It's on the golf course, and nobody's rushing anywhere.
Right.
And people, Naomi in particular, is actually taking time to talk instead of feeling like she has to have the right answer.
Yes.
She's actually asking questions, which is interesting.
Right.
In that scene.
Yeah.
And I wonder, given the rhythms of the movie, if that was particularly difficult to do, because it's the only point of departure of that type in the entire movie.
Yeah, I thought it was so important because, as you say, she does keep her guard up with Michael. She knows that they're in different areas of the bank, so there's a wall, and they're very serious about not sharing information. She's got her eye on him, as we talked about before, so she's always looking at him like, wait a minute. And when she does let her guard down, suddenly he's asking her something that her antenna goes, Moop. So in that scene with James, that's absolutely right. I think it is the one breath that she takes throughout the entire film because you just see her moving and moving and moving. And that's why those scenes of her walking up and down the hallway were so important to me and Mira. But that one scene where she can really say openly and honestly, I'm scared and I don't know what to do. And can you please help me? Can you guide me? And he starts to talk about, he says, well, you've got enough knowledge. You trust your intuition because when that doubt creeps in, that's when you really get in trouble. And I think that's what she's experiencing. But to hear her mentor and to just touch base with him, just to be with him in that moment and to be able to breathe, I think that's true. I think that's one of the only actual breaths she takes throughout the entire journey of the film.
I was just wondering, in comparison to her deportment throughout the rest of the movie, if that scene was particularly hard to play because it's so different from everything else in the movie.
It was interesting because James and I had such immediate chemistry and there was such a feeling that, we could have had that relationship. We talked about how we felt, the backstory went, when we worked together, how we worked together, how he did push me forward and fostered me. But it was something that I wanted, and Mira wanted you to see that color of Naomi because you don't see that in many other scenes. It was interesting that I really actually wanted the relationship between Aaron and Naomi to start off for my character because my feeling was that we were close, that I had brought her along, that I did believe in her, that I meant what I said when I say, when the time's right, I will make the push for you. And I think what's interesting is that Mira, I wanted to play it much more warmly, but Mira wanted to keep a sense of mystery and keep
ambiguity,
that,
sure.
Yeah, and that ambiguity so that you're not quite sure, well, is Naomi brushing her off? Is she dismissing her? Or do you see that she's just, in a way, she's in a panic. She's trying to look for that next win, that next deal. She's not trying to be dismissive. She's just trying to say, this is a bad time. Look at all these people being escorted out. The blackberries are being taken away. Not the time, but when it is the time, I promise I'll do it. Yet she's all business, and she ends it with, I really do need those numbers. But she's true to her word. When they do land the deal,
let's not give too much away.
Yeah, okay.
Let's let people see the movie.
Yeah.
And we're out of time, and we could go on for much longer. I'm so happy that you did this. Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you.
Thank you.
My guest is Anna Gunn. This terrific new film that this very talented actress is in is called Equity. According to here, NPR West's Peter Stencil, the show is mixed by Kat Yor. It's edited by Blake Veit, who's associate producer. I'm Elvis Mitchell. It's The Treatment. catch up on past episodes of The Treatment, go to KCRW.com or listen on your smartphone with KCRW's mobile apps, or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. The Treatment is produced and distributed by KCRW Santa Monica.